y'all. It's me, Andy. I truly just outside as I was coming home, as I was opening the gate to the complex, I freaking dropped my entire drink. So I guess we're being healthy tonight and drinking water. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but it's okay. So anyway, I got some Taco Bell on my way home from work tonight. The apartment is empty except for me, which, well, most people would probably enjoy it. I am not particularly into. I grew up in a house full of people. Growing up, my grandparents lived in our house, and then also I have 3 other siblings. So my house always had people in it. There were always people in it. And so now when my apartment is empty, I get kind of nervous. I don't like having it be super quiet and weird. It's like so bizarre to me. I don't think I could ever live alone because that shit is scary, you know? I didn't realize that the nacho fries were gone from Taco Bell already, so I'm real sad. I got the chalupa cravings box instead. Because I'm trying to be healthy or whatever, I always get beans instead of beef, which, you know, a life hack in case you didn't know, you can replace anything with beef in it at Taco Bell with beans for no charge, and it's like pretty much the same. Like, let's be honest, the beef at Taco Bell is nasty. I did kind of realize today as I was walking home, which, by the way, like, freaking snowed today in Chicago, like, legit has been snowing all day, and like, oh gosh, the great thing about Chicago weather is that no matter what direction you're facing, the wind will always be directly blowing in your face, regardless of where you're walking or how you're walking. We got a ton of delivery and to-go orders, basically within the same like 30-minute span, which is of course how it always happens, and so I was a little bit stressed, but I did definitely get the tips to justify it at least. Which, speaking of, so I work as a host at a restaurant on top of my office job. Remember to always tip your to-go orders. People think they don't need to tip on to-go orders, but seriously, even if it's just a couple dollars, like $2, even if it isn't like a full 18%, your host will appreciate it so much, because we do still have to like keep track of all the orders and process payment. You gotta pack all your food to make sure you're not missing anything, and sometimes people have special requests for how they want things packed, or, you know, we are the ones double checking to make sure that you have the right order. So like, I feel like we deserve something, you know? So the thing I wanted to talk about in my other video was actually I wanted to talk about dating apps. I mentioned previously that I have, you know, a fairly extensive experience with dating apps. I've been on basically all of them. Not really websites, mostly just like the apps. So Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Coffee Meets Bagel. I would say those are the big ones. I figured why not chat about them a little. Talk about how I feel about them. So in case y'all didn't know, in college I was in a relationship for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And that relationship ended like right before Valentine's Day in 2018. And after that relationship ended, I went through this huge hoe phase, which, like, granted, it hasn't super ended. So I guess I'm not through the phase yet. But yeah, it was kind of in that time period. It was in, like, the spring quarter through, like, the summer. I was trying out all these different apps and swiping a lot and messaging a lot, meeting up with a lot of people. I have a decent wealth of experience to judge these various apps. Alright, let's start with the big one, Tinder. Tinder's the one that everyone's probably familiar with. I would say has the most users, which is great if that's what you're looking for. You're very rarely going to run out of people to swipe on Tinder unless you're in like a smaller town. And even then, you probably are going to see more people on Tinder than any other app. It's especially good for kind of younger crowd. I would say if you're going for above even like 30s, Tinder might not be your best bet. But Tinder is definitely more of a hookup app, especially for heterosexual people, and I guess maybe queer women. I don't really know for women, because I am sadly a straight, but it's more for hookups for straight people for sure, because we don't really have a Grindr, which, you know, is the hookup app for gay men. And so conversely, for gay men, Tinder tends to be more of the people looking for relationships. I've had a lot of quote-unquote success with Tinder. Definitely met a lot of guys who I ended up hooking up with or hanging out with or going on dates. Usually just one date. Of course, at first I really wasn't looking for dating. And I'm still really not. But I think, you know, once I got past my phase of just having sex with people, I started to actually spend time with people and not just have sex with them, or, you know, actually go on dates rather than just inviting them over or going over to their place. Tinder is great in the sense that you can find anything if you look hard enough. Granted, you're going to see a lot of kind of the same old, same old. There's a lot of stereotypes about the men who are on Tinder. Like, there's a reason why that happens. Is it dangerous to be eating in my bed? Probably. Do I care? Not really. I feel like every time I forget how hard it is to eat and talk at the same time. In hindsight, I should have gotten a soft taco instead of a hard shell taco, but it's too late now. All of which is to say that, yes, you're going to see, I guess depending on where you are, especially in more rural areas, you're going to see a lot of men holding fish up in their profile pictures for some unknown reason. You'll see a lot of guys referencing the fact that they like The Office, as if that's a personality trait, which... And, you know, a lot of guys will say explicitly in their profile, like, oh, just looking to hook up, or not looking to hook up. And sometimes they won't say anything useful in their profile, which, like, fucking sucks, because how else are you going to weed out the guys you don't want to actually swipe on or even bother messaging? But usually they weed themselves out with their first message or within the first few messages. So Tinder, I would say, is kind of like the entry-level dating app. Kind of low stakes. You don't need to invest too much into it to get something out of it. And, I mean, there's lots of options. Like, tons of options. You can find all sorts of people on there. And theoretically, for instance, you can swipe on men and women. Or sometimes you'll see couples on there looking for a third. You'll see all sorts of stuff. It's wild. So then, the other big dating app I would say is probably Bumble. It has the second best name recognition, I think. Bumble's whole shtick is that women have to be the ones to message first. I, as a woman, swiping on men, have to message them first. And it's like something within the first 2 days or 24 hours or something like that. And if they don't respond, then eventually the match expires, etc., etc. Now, I have personally never had a good experience with Bumble. I've never met up with anyone off of Bumble. Conversations rarely go anywhere. And, you know, even though it pushed me to have to be the one to start conversations, I usually felt, because a lot of the times, again, men would not have very descriptive bios, and so I would just kind of do a, hey, like, how's it going? How are you? What's up? You know, just to, like, have that first message sent. But, of course, I either wouldn't get replies or the conversations wouldn't go anywhere, and so, to me, Bumble wasn't really it. There's obviously some overlap in terms of the users of both Bumble and Tinder, and I mean, all of these apps have some overlap. But even though Bumble is allegedly the more feminist choice between the big two apps, I didn't really get that experience. It didn't feel empowering to me, and also a lot of those dudes on there kind of suck. They're the kind of guys who aren't good at being the first one to message. It takes the pressure off of them, which for me isn't really ideal. I feel that a lot of them are, self-proclaimed feminists, which is to say they're assholes. So yeah, Bumble, not for me. I know people have had good experiences with it, allegedly, but I don't personally know anyone who really likes Bumble. Take that as you will. So the third app I want to talk about is Hinge, which I feel like has been growing a lot more in prominence recently. Hinge's whole thing is that their bios are a lot more involved. You have to answer 3 questions of your choice between the generated questions they have. So for instance, they have a 2 truths and a lie, or where do you want to travel next, or stuff like that. And you have to answer 3 of these questions. And when you see someone else's profile, you have to actually like a specific part of their profile. So you can specifically like one of their photos or like an answer to one of their questions, which ideally would be able to spark some sort of conversation. I've heard whisperings that Hinge also might be based more so on kind of mutual Facebook friends and that sort of thing. I can't really confirm that. I haven't really looked into it. But interestingly, Hinge is actually the app where I first matched with one of my exes. So we talked a little bit on Hinge, but didn't make plans before I deleted Hinge. And so later on, a couple months later, we matched again on Tinder, and that's when we actually had our first date. Whatever that means, I guess. I suppose that on some level it worked out because we matched on both, and also we ended up dating, and we're still friends. So Hinge, I think, is interesting. In my opinion, I think Hinge is definitely more geared towards people who actually want to date or have relationships. It's not so much for hookups, although if I remember correctly, I do believe I've just hooked up with people off of Hinge. But because it is more so based on your personality and different aspects of your profile, not just kind of first physical impressions like it is more so with Tinder and Bumble, it is definitely a little bit more in depth, and it definitely has a different type of crowd. I would say that Hinge has some nice features. They have, for instance, if you pay for premium, you can filter it by like smoking or non-smoking or non-drinkers or religion or political affiliation, stuff like that. I also really like the fact that it listed the neighborhood that people lived in. So Tinder and Bumble are based off of a geographic radius, which can be good, but also is kind of annoying because, of course, if you travel to a different part of your city that you're not normally in and you have your Tinder on, people are going to swipe on you and those matches are going to show up again later in your feed, even though you're not in that area anymore and probably don't really care to see those people. And conversely, people who aren't typically in your area are going to show up on your feed even if they're not actually in your area. With Hinge, it doesn't really account for geographical distance. It more so considers just the region, the area. So for instance, when I was swiping in Evanston, I saw people who were from Logan Square in Bucktown and Wicker Park, which is the area I'm living in now, but isn't super close to Evanston. And so, I ended up going on dates with people from Logan Square. It gives you a better sense of what you're getting into, because especially for those living in bigger cities, honestly, the neighborhood that someone lives in could be a deal breaker, especially for something that's more involved beyond just like a single date. Because it's honestly exhausting to hang out with someone constantly who lives kind of far away. And then finally, the app that I don't really hear a ton of mainstream discussion about, but oddly has affected a lot of people I know personally, Coffee Meets Bagel. Now, the reason why I originally joined Coffee Meets Bagel is because yes, I was in a sorority. We can talk about that another time. My big mentioned that actually a couple of her line sisters had met their long-term partners on this app. And so she knew that I was back on the dating scene, was kind of on the different apps. And so she suggested I try it out. I figured I didn't really have much to lose, and so I tried it out. So Coffee Meets Bagel is much more about quality versus quantity, supposedly. These algorithms ain't shit, let's be honest. So here's the thing. Coffee Meets Bagel only gives you like a couple options per day. But the problem is, in order to like someone, you have to spend beans. And beans you can get by either paying for them or logging in every day or something like that. There are different things you can do to get beans. I guess theoretically, because of this whole currency thing, you have to be a little bit more invested, because anytime you do spend the beans to like someone, you've invested a lot more already from the get-go. But to me, I hated that. I hated that whole mechanism, the whole bean thing. And they give you a ton of beans at the beginning to lure you in, and so you will like a couple people and hopefully get sucked in. But for me, I was not about the kind of guys who I was seeing on there, and I hated the whole bean system thing. Yet, interestingly, not only do I have sorority sisters who have met their long-term partners on there, but also 2 of my coworkers have as well. One of my coworkers, her husband, she actually met on Coffee Meets Bagel, which is fascinating. And then another coworker, her current boyfriend, who she's been seeing for over a year, I don't know exactly how long, she met on Coffee Meets Bagel as well. So that's wild to me. And also, interestingly, all of these women are Asian, so I don't know if that has a factor to it or anything. It seems to be pretty popular in, like, Korean community, stuff like that. But regardless, Coffee Meets Bagel is for sure more about dating and relationships. Not at all for hookups. I would be extremely shocked to see anyone on there who was looking for hookups, because you had to spend so much time and effort on that app to get anywhere. Shit is wild, honestly. I feel like the biggest tragedy of my life is that I've been on so many dating apps, and for not an insignificant amount of time, and yet I don't have any of those wildly bad date stories or anything like that. You know, like, I had guys I didn't like, guys I didn't click with, and dates that didn't go well, but never anything too wild or, you know, that would make a good story time. Nothing like that. Sadly enough, once I started actually going on dates, I had this problem, and I do still kind of have this problem, but I'm not really actively dating right now. I would go on dates with guys. You know, I would go on a date, we would go to a bar or something, or get dinner. Afterwards, they would never want a second date. They would never text me or hit me up again afterwards. I didn't super care, because I didn't really like them. I didn't want a second date, and I wasn't going to text them. But it was definitely a hit to my ego to know that these guys didn't want a second date with me, because I'm a great person, even if they were kind of boring. In my brain, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's because I was giving off the energy that I didn't care about them and didn't want a second date, or maybe I was talking about myself too much. Something that caused quite a few problems after my first breakup last year was that I kind of implemented a radical openness and honesty in my life. I think for a lot of guys that I went on dates with, it turned them off. You know, I would talk about myself a lot, because to me it's easier to just be an open book. I often felt uncomfortable asking people about themselves, because I didn't want to get too deep and make them feel uncomfortable or bring something up that they didn't want to talk about or anything like that. I got very scared about that for a while. I'm kind of learning to find that balance now, how to ask people about themselves and have a good conversation with someone without getting too deep. My fatal flaw as a Pisces, as a water sign, is that I want to know all of people. I want to know everything about someone. If I think they're interesting, I want to know everything about someone. I want to know all the good and all the bad. I want to know all of their dirty secrets, their deepest desires, immediately. And of course, for most people, they're not going to be as open about that. Whereas with me, because I'm so open and honest and willing to talk about anything, I always want that reciprocated. And that's tough for me. But yeah, even though I did kind of go through that period of time where it didn't seem like anyone wanted to date me, I guess that's all to say. I like to think I'm becoming a better first date, but who knows? Because I haven't really gone on many first dates recently. And it's not like the guys that I go on these dates with are giving me feedback or anything. I wish. Wait, do I wish? Ah, it's fine. I don't really care what they think. I still have dessert, but honestly, I'm running out of things to talk about, so it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to finish eating my Taco Bell without talking still. And, guess I'll see you next time. I feel the urge to eat a lot of fast food and shoot the shit. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you gained some insight or maybe chuckled a little bit or something. Who knows? But I think I'm enjoying this, and I'm enjoying getting back into creating stuff. And also, this week I am going to start recording for my podcast, which I am starting. So be on the lookout for that. I am pretty excited because I have been wanting to make a podcast for forever. And I'm going to finally make it happen because I'm not just going to think about doing things, I'm going to actually do them, which is great. Regardless of where you are or what you're doing, I hope you either had a good day or are about to have a good day and are making the most of your situation and whatever is going on in your life. And just remember, men ain't shit. Bye.